Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Ryan, and welcome to Central Park. We know that getting to Central Park can still be pretty difficult for a lot of people, so we want to continue bringing the park to you through virtual programs, both longer 45-minute virtual programs, as well as shorter informal 15-minute virtual programs, like our weekly walks we're going to be taking another of today. Thank you again for joining us, specifically me, myself, Ryan, and us here at the Central Park Conservancy on today, February 9th, 2022, where we're going to take a 15-minute weekly walk of Lover's Lane, an interesting landscape that no longer really exists in current pathways today, as well as some of the beautiful historic photos we'll see on our walk. Thanks again so much for joining us and supporting us here at the Central Park Conservancy. Today, we're going to be taking this 15-minute weekly walk. We're going to explore this area known as Lover's Lane, which once existed nearby today's Belvedere Castle, right around about 79th Street. As we approach Valentine's Day, we do want to keep a very love-themed walk through the park today. We'll certainly enjoy some of these features, ones that have some love themes to them, as well as some features in the park that are amongst my favorites, including my most beloved statue here in Central Park. Now, as we move through the park again, you may be familiar with us here at the Central Park Conservancy. We're the ones that are not only helping to educate you about the park, but also helping to keep it looking clean and green. Our mission being to preserve and celebrate Central Park as a sanctuary from the pace and pressures of city life, enhancing enjoyment and well-being of all. Now, as we use Zoom today, let's use the chat feature to let us know where you're joining us from or share a memory. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A feature, and my colleague Jose will be on the back end answering any questions that you might have. Last thing you'll see pop up are going to be a visitor poll or two that'll launch throughout the tour today. Once everybody has voted in those, I can share the results and we can see what we're all thinking. Now, without any further ado, let's jump into our tour. But real quick, before we do, I do want to make one quick announcement. We are going to be having a few special programs coming up, both virtual and in person. And this is actually one of our upcoming specialty virtual programs we're going to be doing. Walk and look at celebrating really Black History Month and specifically highlighting the Frederick Douglass Circle Monument, a really beautiful piece that's located near 110th Street and 8th Avenue. If you would like to join us for this really special look at the creating of this landscape, where we explore the history and development of this public monument by the Harlem-Nier that honors African-American orator and abolitionist Frederick Douglass, you can join us and hear John T. Reddick, the Conservancy's Director of Community Engagement Projects, discuss the Conservancy's goals and the artistic talent to create this unique monument. This is going to be a special program that's only going to happen on this day, Thursday, February 17th at 6:30. So if you would like to join us, please feel free to scan this QR code or write down that code, and you'll actually get $5 off this paid tour. We do encourage you to come and join us and celebrate Black History Month as we learn a little bit about this really amazing piece here at Central Park. I will share this again at the end of our walk today, just so anybody that hasn't had an opportunity to can check out and see if you would like to get another coupon code. And I do seem to be having some problems with my maps on here. I'll try to make sure that these work as best as they can. Do apologize for the hiccups that we're having here and the little bit of technical difficulties. If there is an issue or if somebody does have a problem with the maps, which seem like they're going to be causing a few problems, certainly let us know. You can email us at programs@centralparknyc.org if you are interested in getting a proper map, just in case these do not work throughout the tour today. But without any further ado, sorry for the delay. Let's jump into our walk. We're going to be exploring to an area known as Lover's Lane in Central Park today. So as we begin our walk, we're going to be starting right over on East 72nd Street along 5th Avenue, right near an area known as Inventor's Gate. And as we walk into the park, towards this really Valentine's Day themed walk, I did start us here for a particular point or for a particular reason. As we begin here at Inventor's Gate, one of the about 20 inscribed gates that you'll find throughout the park, many of which came during the mid-1860s. We can stop by this one, which has an appropriate statue of Samuel F.B. Morse hanging right nearby. Samuel F.B. Morse sits proudly here at Inventor's Gate. This piece would be erected here around 1871 and comes by the sculptor Byron Pickett. We see Morse standing with some of his probably more recognizable equipment, some telegraph and Morse code related technology. We do know that Samuel F.B. Morse, with a few other gentlemen, would help to develop electromagnetism and eventually help to design a single wire telegraph, which he would help to create Morse code through a series of clicks and communications using that single wire telegraph. Interestingly enough, though, we'd actually see Samuel F.B. Morse holding a very different profession. For quite some time, he was a very talented oil painter. We can actually see one of Morse's favorite, or one of my favorite painting rather, of Morse's here, titled The Gallery of the Louvre, which he actually created multiple miniature paintings of several famous paintings that can be found in the Louvre Museum. But a beautiful piece that we can see here that really highlights some of Morse's just incredibly ingenuity, his incredible design, and his incredible oil painting skill, of course. We do see Morse actually doing a lot of busts beyond traditional style paintings, and we see him capturing the portraits of many different types of people, including his wife, which we can see here, named Lucretia Pickering Walker Morse. We'd actually see Morse having a really interesting transitioning into inventing. We would see Morse actually beginning really as a painter, traveling around and actually being commissioned to do portraits. One portion he received in 1825 was that of Marquis de Lafayette down in Washington, D.C. Morse would travel from his home in Connecticut and during this time start his painting. But unfortunately, his wife, who was about to give birth to their third child, would unfortunately suffer a heart attack and would pass away in 1825. Once Morse received a letter that his wife had fallen sick, he would make his way back home, but only to discover that his wife had already died and been buried. He had been heartbroken that he hadn't been able to say goodbye to his wife, so we do see him really studying or looking into an interest he already had in electromagnetism. We see him with a few other gentlemen working hard to develop an amazing way of communication through this single wire telegraph that would be created between the 1830s and 1840s. By 1844, we would see the first telegraph or Morse code message being sent through the telegraph from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore, Maryland by Morse himself. A really sad and somber transition into his history as an inventor, but a really passion-driven one. And I think it's pretty interesting to think about as we make our way through the park during this Valentine's Day season, remembering even some of the bad stories that led to really amazing creation and really amazing passion here in America. As we make our way beyond this Morse statue, we can make our way a little bit deeper into the park, crossing the street near this 72nd Street stretch and coming up to an area that's a little more seldom visited during the winter months. As we make our way up, we can see another beautiful relief statue that exists just up here. The beautiful statue we come to is none other than Mother Goose. Mother Goose having a series of different child story depictions on it. And we can see Mother Hubbard here, as well as Mother Goose, and a few other little storybook tales as we adventure around this big, beautiful piece of granite. We can see Humpty Dumpty here, and all of these different figures are actually sculpted from one large block of granite, a beautiful relief piece where the sculpting is really just carved away and removed from the overall block of granite, giving us these beautiful depictions left over. We would see this piece come around about 1938 and coming as the gift from Frederick Roth. Frederick Roth actually being the New York Park's head sculptor from about 1934 to 1936. Because of that, we can see him being the most represented artist work to be found in Central Park today, having many other, including Balto, the Dancing Goat, and the Honey Bear, just to name a few. As we make our way just a little bit west of this area of Mother Goose, we can see two other statues that are very appropriate during this winter season. We can see the snow babies. two little busts that were created by Victor Furch around 1938, and that came here celebrating the opening of this landscape, which is known as Rumsey Playfield. Looking just next to the snow babies, we can see this open patch of area, which has a nice little plaque rather, depicting what it is commemorating. And that's this play area that was donated by Mary Harriman Rumsey. We see this coming around 1934, really, or actually rather kind of coming to fruition more around about 1937, really replacing an old restaurant that once existed here. We would see this really being brand new, starting the first permanent playgrounds in the park, and also being one of the first to really be named after a civic woman here of New York. We see Rumsey Playfield certainly becoming a fun playground for quite some time, but in the more recent years, since about 1985 or so on, we've seen this really taking home as a different fixture in the park. This has become the home of the Central Park Summer Stage, operated by the City Parks Foundation. We can see this stage coming up just about every year, and with more recent restoration done to the summer stage, we can see a much more expansive open area, one that helps to invite in many different accessibility levels and a lot of different people to enjoy music here in the park, something that's always been a traditional activity and one that continues on for free, thanks to the City Parks Foundation and some of the many different free as well as paid performances that occur here in Central Park at this summer stage. Although we don't have any concerts going on right now, we can enjoy the sunny quietness of the park, as well as a few horses that seem to be walking by on that bottom right side, as we start to make our way up north right now, walking along the East Side Drive. As we make our way up just a little bit more, we can find another fixture here in the park, one that is certainly a romantic place, or certainly one that's fun to just enjoy the park. It's the Low Boathouse, a great spot to get some food on our walk through the park, or as you might have guessed, to rent a boat to sail around the lake. There once was a boathouse created here in 1872, made entirely of wood, but eventually we'd see that, of course, falling into disrepair. We would see boating continuing throughout the 19th century, and we would see a lot of really popularity surrounding boating to the point where we needed a more permanent fixture. Eventually, by 1954, we'd see this permanent boathouse being created, finding a solution to storing the boats as well as feeding people that are traveling through the park. And today, this offers a great area to come in and potentially have a romantic dinner or lunch, as well as enjoy the park, which sits just outside the windows and one of the most beautiful areas, the lake, the largest naturalistic body of water to be found in the park. As we make our way through the park, enjoying some of these nice romantic scenes, I do want to share a poll, and that is, what's your favorite romantic place here in Central Park? I'll share that poll and continue on through our presentation. And what we can see here is another thing that you might be able to rent out from the boathouse. It's an authentic Venetian gondola. Venetian gondolas were actually original fixtures in the park, having an original one being gifted to Frederick Law Olmsted around about late 1880s, about 1870 or so. We see this Venetian gondola getting a lot of use in the park and certainly adding a lot of fun to the beauty of the park's serenity. So much so that we see this really continuing with more Venetian gondolas brought in towards the time of future World Fairs, with some of them making their way to Central Park. Today, you can still find a Venetian gondola operated by some of the sailors over at the Low Boathouse. A Venetian gondola ride, I believe, costs you about $45 for half an hour, while a traditional rowboat ride will be about $15 for half an hour. So a very affordable way to still enjoy the park, doing a traditional activity like this one we can see back from 1894, people sailing around that Bethesda Terrace area on one of the authentic Venetian gondolas. As we make our way through present day park, we can make our way just north of the Loeb Boathouse, coming up through the Ramble. And as we come through the Ramble, we're coming through the second largest woodland in the park, a really amazing landscape, actually my favorite landscape in the park, and a really romantic one nonetheless too. I always think that a very romantic, fun date idea is one that doesn't have a lot of structure or plans. really just having a loose spur of the moment type of day. And that's certainly the type of day or adventure you can have when you come into the Ramble. Coming into the Ramble, you're literally wandering around an area that is meant to get you lost. So it's a perfect place to throw your plans to the wind and really just let loose, letting nature really decide the path for you. As we ramble around this landscape, ramble being an English word, which really means to ramble or to wander without a specific path or destination in mind, we can certainly do just that as we wrap through these twisting, careening paths and come up to some exciting little hills and low-lying areas. And as we make our way just up the path a little bit, we can see a small little grassy area just to our right. One that not a lot of people probably visit, but one that actually holds one of my favorite secrets of the park just a little bit in the back of it. If we slide over to the grass on the right and walk just a little bit back towards this tree line, we can see a different perspective to a piece of art that we may have noticed or not noticed before from the other side. But as we make our way down, we can come up to what is probably my most beloved statue here in Central Park. Only fitting we visit this around Valentine's Day. We're coming up to my favorite statue, which is known as Still Hunt. If you're a runner or bicyclist, you might know this as Cat Hill or Cat Rock. Still Hunt is one of the few unplaqued or unmarked statues or artworks that you can find here in Central Park, having been erected around 1883 in this location. It's sculpted by a gentleman named Edward Chemes, who was an animalier, or a sculptor who specialized in animals, taking a lot of time of studying some of the wildlife down at the Central Park Zoo, helping to build inspiration for some of his sculpting. This piece is certainly immaculate, and one of the things I love most about it, on top of it not being plaqued or having any obvious kind of human-made signs of it being a human-made object, we can see how this pedestal almost looks like it's just coming and being built directly out of the Manhattan schist bedrock. It looks so natural, such as is his pose, meant to look like an actual panther crouching or getting ready to jump and make a strike. This certainly was a little startling to many of the public that witnessed it during its initial viewing, and today it certainly still offers a fun, exciting, and sometimes scary view for onlookers that are walking just below it. I love taking the time to come up to the top of this statue and get some different perspectives on it, but a really beautiful piece that we can approach from the back as we're walking through the Ramble right along the east side near the East Side Drive. Coming over again this landscape that some people like to appropriately name Cat Hill, but certainly a really beautiful piece and one that is not too noticed as we come through the park. As we continue just back over that little meadow and head just a little bit more north now, we're coming up to about 79th Street, right near Belvedere Castle. And as we start to make our way just wrapping out of the Ramble and out onto the East Side Drive momentarily, we can enjoy some of the beautiful lush green colors we're getting. Very warm day outside today as we're walking around. We're getting some blue sky shining through. We're getting temperatures almost in the 40s or 50s. It feels like it's spring all of a sudden rather than winter again, but we're certainly getting a lot of enjoyment throughout the day as we get these blue skies, these beautiful evergreen trees, and of course, plenty of beautiful paths to watch and look at as we walk around the park. As we make our way up, we're actually coming to the path that was known as Lover's Lane. So as we make our way up here, I do want to share, or rather end that last poll that we had and share the results. And this was one which was just a simple one. It's, do you have a favorite romantic place in the park? And of course, there's so many areas that are romantic in the park. There's really too many to possibly include on a list like this, but I think I hit a couple of the major ones. Some of the ones I think we tend to immediately think of, like Bethesda Terrace and Bow Bridge, certainly Conservatory Garden, Shakespeare Garden, or really anywhere with beautiful flowers. Cherry Hill is certainly a beautiful one, maybe mostly during the cherry blossom season in April. I'm surprised to see not too many people were very excited about having a romantic ice skating trip at Woolman Rink, and not too many people really enjoy the Copcott or Dean Summer House, at least not during this season, which I could understand. It's a little bit colder. A favorite of mine on there is Ladies Pavilion. I think one of the most beautiful areas in the park and one that helps to capture a good mix of really everything the park was intended to do. But certainly no bad spot, no bad romantic area in the park. And I'm sure there's plenty others that we didn't mention on here. So if there are any other great romantic spots in the park that you can think of, we'd love to hear you write them out in the chat section so we can see what you're thinking. As we continue, we're going to be wrapping down this path now, which is known as Lover's Lane, or rather was known as Lover's Lane. Lover's Lane is an interesting path that really referred to this path that bordered the north side of 79th Street Transverse and the south edge of what once was the Croton Aqueduct Receiving Reservoir. As we walk down this area today, it doesn't look like anything too special, and we can see how the landscape has changed up a little bit from what it once was. Today, we can get a more visible view of what looks like a really Arctic covered turtle pond, one of the smallest and newest bodies of water to make its way into Central Park, as well as just tucked around the backside, the Great Lawn, something that would find its way into the park right around the 1930s. As we make our way down, this path is best known today as a path that leads you to Belvedere Castle, taking you near the Turtle Pond Plaza by King Yaga-Ewo and a little bit south of the Cleopatra's Needle or Egyptian obelisk. But not too many features found on this specific path today. Walking back on this path back in the 19th century, we would have saw this path lined with a lot more modest, smaller trees, and certainly a lot more of them, helping to block out some of the less natural view we once had. Back in the 1900s, this area would have, or really through the 1800s and into the 1900s, would have had a big reservoir visible just to the north, one that would have really disrupted the natural view. So we could have imagined in the past, this area was probably lined with a lot more trees, helping to block out some of the concrete walls that once existed just to the north of this path. But this dense tree-covered path certainly added a beautiful little walkway for lovers to take a stroll of through the park. As we make our way today, we can see how a lot of the trees have certainly matured and grown out to become more free, self-standing, larger mature trees rather than that dense blockade of smaller saplings that we once had. Certainly a little bit has changed in the landscape today, and certainly we can see a lot as we look out to our right. We would actually see Lover's Lane kind of changing up a little bit once Turtle Pond and the Great Lawn were to come in around the mid-1930s. Once we would see that Croton Aqueduct Receiving Reservoir that once ran up to where the edge of Turtle Pond is today, back during the late 1800s and early 1900s, we'd eventually see it being removed and plans for the Great Lawn eventually being brought into place around 1937. We would see the Great Lawn being filled in, Turtle Pond, at that point being called Belvedere Lake, being created, and eventually this landscape shifting into what it's known as today, getting its renamed Turtle Pond around 1985. After this landscape, or these several landscapes were created in the surrounding area, we start to see Lover's Lane dwindle in remembrance and usage. Looking back, we can actually look at this news article from the New York Times coming from March 4th, 1931, which actually specifically mentions Lover's Lane. You actually rarely see Lover's Lane mentioned too much in old historical text or articles, but this is one of the few remembrances we can see coming from an article really categorizing the restoration of the Great Lawn that was being planned. In this, it mentions that running from east to west, just to the north of 79th Street Transverse Road and south of the lake site is the narrow path known as Lover's Lane. This path will be widened to 20 feet and will provide a clear view across the new area. For some reason, after this article was posted, we don't see Lover's Lane appropriately getting the restoration that it was spoken of in this article. And we eventually see Lover's Lane dwindling over time. Although we can still see some remnants, of course, the path in essence still remains, as well as some of the features like benches and some dense trees that we could see in the old photos can still be found here today. Of course, quite a lot has changed in this landscape over time, but we still can get beautiful views of some of the modern flora that we have here today, both evergreen and deciduous trees, helping to create a little bit of density in this path and still providing us beautiful areas to sit down and enjoy the park, whether by ourselves or with a lover. And looking back again, we can remember what this path might have been like all those years ago, looking a little bit different, but still ultimately serving one of the same purposes, an escape from the city, and one that we can enjoy maybe with a significant other or even just by ourselves. This photo shows the Lover's Lane area from around 1896, the photo coming from Stephen Thompson and being colorized by Ahmet Azar. But this gives us an idea looking at some of those old stereographic images, helping to get a little bit clearer, almost colored image of what we could see if we were looking down that view today. And of course, we can see benches and trees still lining the path, providing beautiful little nooks and crannies to sit, take a rest, and enjoy the view of all the park and flora around us. As we look through the area today, of course, a lot has changed up and a lot has modernized over time. Looking over this view today, we can see a significant change from that 1842 Croton receiving reservoir that once sat in this landscape. Looking over here today, we can see new remnants that would come into the park in the 20th century, such as the Delacourt Theater just sticking out over here on our left above that Fred Fryer ladder. We can see not only Turtle Pond, but also the Turtle Pond Nature Blind, two fixtures that would make their way into the park towards the 1980s, as well as in the back right, the Great Lawn, one of the major landscapes that was added to this general area of the park that certainly affected and shifted the way that Lover's Lane exists today. Unfortunately, we don't have Lover's Lane remaining in the same general light or the same kind of idea that it used to be held with, but today we certainly see this landscape really taking on a plethora of other uses as well, expanding beyond just a landscape where lovers can have a nice stroll, but where anybody in the park can come and enjoy the beautiful surroundings and the landscape. And of course, coming up here, there's still plenty of little surprises that we could still see today that we once would have been able to see some over 100 years ago. Walking down this little staircase along this road, we can find one of the only accessible transverse roads to the park, which is the 79th Street Transverse. Coming down this staircase, we can actually be led to an amazing work of really human architecture. This is going to be the beautiful 79th Street Transverse Road, an immaculate tunnel carved through the bedrock of New York, Manhattan mica schist, and one that was created well over 150 years ago, being blasted through using gunpowder and controlled blasts, as well as plenty of pickaxes and other human labor to help knock out some of this tremendously sturdy stone and create this tunnel, allowing for traffic to pass overhead as well as underneath. This arch was such an amazing work of art during the time it was created that the staircase we just walked down was actually created back in the 1800s, just to give people, and specifically lovers, a chance to come down and view this mass work of art and human, really just architecture. It's amazing to think that these arches that were created over 150 years ago with really simple tools and really simple technology can support the modern uses of technology we have today, like some of our large buses that have no problem of making it through these massive arches with little to no manipulation from their original creation. We can see these beautiful works of art existing all throughout the park, with arguably this 79th Street arch being the most incredible one of all. This is actually the only transverse road that you'll find a pathway or a staircase on, leading you down to the road to be able to view this beautiful work of art. As we make our way back up that staircase, we can also see one of the other unique surprises and amenities we have in this area, the beauty of Belvedere Castle, not only to look at, but also to climb up and get a beautiful view of this area. And of course, the view has certainly changed up a lot since Lover's Lane once existed. But as we come back to Belvedere Castle, a landscape and a fixture in the park that we could have seen existing during the time of Lover's Lane, we can come up and enjoy the new view that we have today. And of course, the view might have changed up quite a bit, but we can still certainly enjoy all the new fixtures that have made their way into the park, helping to really improve and expand our use for the park, as well as expand other people's use for the park. And I think that's one of the most lovable things about Central Park. It's accessibility, the way that anybody can find something beautiful or something to do here in the park. And of course, even during the winter, there's still plenty of different things to do, things to see, and things to enjoy in the park. Plenty of those romantic areas we mentioned, of course, are open year round and are certainly great areas to bring people to during this holiday season. Of course, there are also other great things to come and check out in the park, like Belvedere Castle, which we're standing right next to. The two towers are open and available to climb up top. So those who wish to come and have a little high adventure here in Central Park, make your way to the top of Belvedere Castle and get the highest human-made point in Central Park. As we come to the end of the walk today, I do want to again thank you for joining us and let you know that there's also plenty of other different ways to be involved in the park and to help out. Of course, here at the Central Park Conservancy, we're the nonprofit caring for the park, but we couldn't do it without you, and the park certainly needs you. And we want to know, what do you need most about the park? So we'd love to hear you share a favorite memory or favorite aspect about Central Park and use the hashtag #TheParkNeedsUs so we can feature it on our social media channels. But of course, there's plenty of different ways, both on our website, to learn about the park. You can take a self-guided tour of the park. You can take an in-person tour with us, or continue to join us on more virtual programs. And of course, we have plenty of specialty programs coming up, as well as in-person specialty programs. Like, join us on this Saturday, as well as on Monday, Valentine's Day, as we take some special sweetheart strolls. If you check the links in the chat box, you can find the links for these upcoming sweetheart stroll programs we'll be doing this Saturday and Monday. Specialty programs that'll take you through an area of the park, as well as provide you a nice warm beverage. And of course, we do have plenty of other different programs, such as our celebratory Black History Month programs. We do have the celebration of the Frederick Douglass Circle and Monument, the creation of it, where we're going to explore the history and development of this public monument by the Harlem Year that honors the African-American orator and abolitionist Frederick Douglass. John T. Reddick, who is the Conservancy's Director of Community Engagement Projects, is going to be discussing the Conservancy's engagement with the Harlem community, the local public officials, and the artistic talent that was used and brought together to help create this monument. So certainly encourage you to come listen to him talk, because he can certainly do a much better job explaining the real amazing history and artwork of this landscape, which he actually had involvement in helping to create. So we would love to see you come on some of our virtual specialty programs like that, as well as, of course, continue coming on our longer 45-minute virtual programs and our shorter 15-minute weekly walks. Thank you again so much for joining us today. I do apologize for the hiccups that we were having with our little bit of technology today. Hopefully we'll have that all corrected and be good to go by next week. But we do look forward to seeing you in the future, and hopefully next week on another weekly walk. I will be leaving this open for a few more minutes in case there are any questions that we can answer last minute. And I'll also remind you that if you do scan that QR code on the bottom, or if you do write down that code on the bottom, you will get $5 off this virtual program, which will only be occurring on Thursday, February 17th at 6:30 p.m. So thank you again, everybody, so much for joining us today. I'll leave this room open for a few more minutes, and if there are any last-minute questions, we'll get to those. But from all of us here at the Central Park Conservancy, thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe, be well, and we'll see you soon.